Hello there and welcome to another helping of Classic Car Chat for Classic Car Nerds. We are the Tyre Kickers and my name is Max.
Hello there, and I'm Matt. We are the guys who squint at classic cars online and then suck our teeth when we see them in the flesh.
Coming up in this episode, we talk German classics. Are their barnstormers superior to our British bruisers?
Also ahead, retro car tats. We take a look at all those period car accessories we used to go mad for, from furry seats to fur orange.
So strap on your beaded seat covers and crank up the Goodman stereo as we press play on episode 11 of the Tyre Kickers.
So yes, we're back and ready for another 40 minutes or so of tyre kicking. Thank you to all of you who've been in touch about episode 10. It was a really good one to make, wasn't it, Max? And we're really glad you enjoyed it as well. Loads of great reactions to our posts on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, your cars, your opinions, all that sort of stuff. We love it. We'll get to that shortly. But first, let's talk about some of the stuff that we've been up to since we last spoke. And Max, you've just finished all that work on your 60s Porsche. So it's all retrimmed. It's looking great, by the way. There were some great shots online, which people said were really, really nice. So I guess it's all perfect for you to enjoy all summer, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. Perfect, finished, ready to be enjoyed. Nothing left to do but drive it. So surely this is now the time to sell it. Sorry to break the internet here, but I am thinking of selling the car.
Now, you said this to me recently. I didn't think you were thinking of going through with it. You're not serious. You just literally spent a fortune on it. Now is the time to sit in that interior and enjoy it, surely.
Well, endure might be the right word, actually, because I drove it back from the trimmers, and that was in Gatwick, and I live just outside Cirencester. So it was up the M25 and along the M4. Now, I've done that quite a few times in that car, but it was half term. The M25 was chocker. The M4 was really busy. The 3-hour journey took me 5.5 hours, and by the end of it, I just thought, oh, God, will this journey ever stop? And I think that's one of the slight problems with the 912, is that I bought it during the lockdown and probably I didn't really think about it enough because I think I need something that can have slightly longer legs to go touring. And we were talking in the last episode actually about your friend who had that Mercedes SL and he jumped in it and drove to the south of Spain, I think. And I thought, oh, wow, that's good, isn't it? And then I looked at mine and thought, oh my God, I'd never do that in that. It would kill me. It'd be like a torture chamber. So there's been several things about it that have made me think maybe it's time to go. Maybe it's time to sell up. I want something that can do distances. I think I want something a little bit faster. Now, I knew when I bought the 1.6 912, Porsche 912, that it wasn't a fast car, but it really isn't a fast car. And sometimes it does struggle up a hill. And I do struggle to make an overtake, and I do like a good overtake, and I am struggling at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose so. Although I think about selling my car every other time I get in it. Because there's always something, isn't there? You're going, oh, perhaps it is a bit old. Perhaps it is a bit annoying. Perhaps the clutch is a bit heavy. Perhaps I do want something that actually is automatic and goes a bit further or stuff like that.
Yeah, I do get it. It's a funny thing with classic cars, isn't it? I definitely have a kind of cycle where I'm really excited about it for the first year. And then the second year, I'm starting to think, oh, what if I got one of those? And then the third year, I'm kind of selling it. And it's always the same when you're doing it up a car because you think, well, once I do that, it'll be great. Once I get the paintwork fine, it'll be great. And once I attend to that misfire, it'll be great. And once I get this done, it'll be great. And you get there, and like most things, it's the journey, not the destination. You get there and you think, oh, right, okay, well, I'm interested in something else now.
It's the thrill of the chase thing as well, isn't it? It's going and looking at cars and buying that other one and having that excitement again. And perhaps, perhaps I'll get to this with my Sunbeam Alpine, although it's looking a long way off now. I'll finish it and then I'll just think, it is a bit boring. Talking about classic cars and always having things wrong with them is actually, I do like, one of the things I like about having a classic car is the classic car wave. As you drive along, somebody waves at you. But it's a sort of mutual respect thing I was thinking this week because you're waving at somebody and you're knowing that in their car something's wrong as well. And whenever you see someone driving along in a classic car, a lot of people smile and go, oh, that's nice. But as a classic car owner, you know that they're in there going, what is that rattle?
You could feel the pain. It's classic car pity, isn't it? It's like a way of saying, yeah, sorry about that. I know what you're going through.
Oh, okay. So you'll update us on this as it goes along. I mean,
oh, it's a rolling melodrama with me, isn't it? There's always something nice, isn't it? So you'll be updated. Yeah, trust me.
Well, talking of drama, I took my car, my Sunbeam Alpine, in to get some suspension parts done. I bought all the parts. I had it all sorted. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. There was 2 ball joints, 2 bushes to replace, and a track rodding cap thing. Dropped it in the garage, chased them as you do. Have you started it? No. Have you started? No. Eventually they'd started it, and then I got a call. You know when you get that call and you think it's too early to be finished? What's wrong?
He's just seen it from 10 yards and said,
and they said, do you want to come down? It's maybe a little bit more than first thought. Oh, God. They said, you need to see it. Oh, God, here we go.
No, I don't.
I don't want to see it. Just do it.
Just do it.
So, as you know, so it was up on the ramp with the wheels off. It's very rusty. There's a lot of old bolts and original bolts on there, or when it was restored back in the 90s, it's still there. So they're saying it's going to be a real job to get this stuff out. Looking at it all, there's also a few other things. Oh, by the way, there's a hole there. I'm not going to put my finger through it. Yeah, don't put your finger through it. There wasn't a hole there before.
And especially not a screwdriver.
Yeah, don't do that. It's a little bit, the subframe, I've had a bit of work done on the front suspension last year, and this needs to be done now. And their argument is, why don't you just wait till the winter, pull the lot off, and just do the lot? Because we're going to spend probably half the time anyway doing this one job, and then you probably need to do more stuff anyway. So I sort of said, well, I can see the logic. So what do I need to do now? And they said, we don't really need to do anything right now. You can wait till the winter. It'll be a bit rattly, but that's fine. It's not going to cause any damage necessarily. It's just going to be annoying. So I sort of went, well, okay, fair enough. And then I went away and I came, you sleep on it and you think, well, okay, I can understand the point of that. But it comes back to, like you're saying, am I going to keep this car forever? Do I want to spend? It's potentially looking at 3,000 or 4,000 now to do the front suspension. That's quite a lot on a 10, well, it's about 15 grand car, I suppose. So you've got to, that's quite a heavy investment, isn't it? On one area of it.
And also, I think you've got the attention span of a gnat as well. So I
Sorry,
don't
what are you
saying? I don't think you're going to have that car forever. Hello. So I think maybe, would it be time to move it on? You'd sell in the summer and buy something in the winter?
No, because I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy having it. It's just that I needed those jobs done, but now they're not done. And this is the other thing. So the cars come back with them not done.
You see, and that's always nagging at the back of your head then. Now you know it's not done. You know it's there. I find that difficult to enjoy it when you think there's something to be done, isn't it? Because you can't turn a deaf ear or turn a blind eye to something you know is wrong.
It's like going to the doctors and being told there's something wrong with you. You've gone in with a stomachache and they said, it might be more serious. We might need to do some tests. It's that thing, then suddenly it's like, ugh. So that I think I possibly need a second opinion. I need to probably take a view of whether I just attack these small jobs. As horrible as they are, I don't know whether there was an element with the garage that just didn't fancy doing them.
Yeah, there is that, isn't there? Because sometimes the jobs are real horrible jobs and they just think, I don't want it.
Yeah, and suspension's not really that exciting, especially when the bolts are sort of a bit rusty and stuff like that. So I'm sort of thinking I need that done. And then, because if I was going to keep the car long term, or it's going to add a lot of value, it's a bit like having an extension on your house, isn't it? You've got to come to a point where you think, well, actually, is it going to add anything, or is it just going to, I'm going to sink all this money in and never see it again? So you've got to do that. So I've got to weigh that up.
And also now you can't sell it because everybody knows it needs $3 grand worth of work on the suspension.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a TR7, by the way, this I'm describing. Going back to what I was just saying about not using the car, only using the car on sunny days. I think I've used it 3 times. That's not strictly true. I've done more than that. I did get down to a meet at a place called the Departure Lane, Departure Lounge, I think it's called, in Alton in Hampshire. And it was sort of the one sunny Sunday that there was, in about, the sort of preceding 2 days and preceding two days afterwards just rained. But the sun came out and it was packed. Some really good stuff there. You'd have enjoyed it. I put it up on Instagram. There was a Citroen GS, which we talked about. I grew up with.
Nice, yeah.
Nice old Alpine. And some Alpines, some old Mercs. That though is a good meet. Departure Lounge, I think it's called. It's a good meet if you're in the sort of Hampshire South Coast area. It's £1 to enter.
Oh,
but
cool.
they've had to do that, but to pay for the public liability insurance, they've had their hand forced on that.
Okay.
Because of course nobody has an accident anymore, do they? It's always somebody's fault. So I don't mind that so much. But I've got a question to ask you about something.
Mm-hmm.
pay to display.
Oh.
Do you think it's right for car show organisers to ask you to pay sort of sometimes double what the punters pay to bring your car into the show and park it up?
Well, it's kind of you're giving them content and you're paying for it. But it's a double-edged sword, this, isn't it? Because I do think the car meets that I go to, you pay a tenner to get in and you think, well, this is great, isn't it? Because, somebody's putting the organising behind it. There's marshals to park your car. And you do feel you have to contribute because they're really enthusiastic, some of these car meets. But then you get to start to think, well, this is just somebody making an absolute killing, isn't it? Out of
I
this
suppose,
and the coffees and all that kind of stuff.
I've just signed up to do a local one. It's £10 to enter, and that goes to the local air ambulance. So fair enough, you know where it's going. Sometimes they're a bit vague. They don't say where they're going. But that's twice as much as that I'd have to pay as if I went to look at the cars. So okay, you get a passenger free or whatever. But I just noticed a little bit more of this coming in around me. I noticed there was one last year. They wanted 25 quid to enter one static event. So it was just to park up and get, and then there was some extra, you could look at some extra cars or something.
Other hobbies, if you like, pale into insignificance when you compare them to classic cars because there's such a huge turnout for all these shows. So I kind of think sometimes it's an acceptable price to pay to keep the whole thing going because we have such an enthusiastic hobby. Maybe every so often you just have to cough up.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, on the flip side, it's great to see how many events there are knocking about this year. It seems to have grown sort of year on year from when COVID started, which is great to see. I don't normally do these all-day shows because I find it quite boring. You've got to get there at 8 a.m, haven't you, and then stay there all day.
Well, then you've got to sit on the camp chair behind your car, eating a cheese sandwich, looking very, very unhappy. So,
well, you could do all that stuff anyway.
I could do that for free. I saw in this week's Classic Car Weekly, Fuzz from Car SOS was asked about, do you go to car events anymore? And he said, no, I'm quoting this. I rarely go to classic events now where people turn up, get their picnic hamper out and sit at the back of their car. Shows like that put people off. And it's funny, there is a slight culture of that now, isn't it? That you sit at the back of your car with a sign saying, do not touch and look miserable. And I kind of wonder why bother?
No, I wonder why bother. I sent you a picture of a recent meet, won't say where it was. And a guy had turned up in an old 60s car, and it was just sort of a 60s saloon car, family car kind of thing. And he had a replica of the family car in front with a sign that said, do not touch. And then he was sat looking like a bulldog chewing a wasp in a chair. And just thought, why are you here? Because you clearly don't want to talk to anybody. You don't want anybody any near your car. Oh, and there was lots of signs as well. When they put big signs up saying, with all the information on, so that you don't ask any questions.
It's a 1969, not a 1968. Don't ask me.
Well, let us know what you think about all of this. Pay to display, do you think that's fair enough, or would you rather just put some money in a bucket? Do you think Max should sell his car? Do you think he should keep it?
And what Matt should do his suspension?
What should I do about my car? Should I get it fixed, or should I just wait for it to fall apart like the Flintstones? Comment on our posts on Instagram. We are at the Tyre Kickers UK.
So some great reaction to episode 10. Thank you very much, including a couple of amazing reviews on Apple Podcasts. We are now getting close to 2,000 downloads. So thank you if you're listening, and please spread the word. It's great to see you enjoying what we're doing.
Yeah, and just some quick stats if you're interested. We've now got listeners in 32 different countries and 337 different towns and cities, from Austria to Australia, the US, Europe, Scandinavia, and the place where most of you are. That is staring at the sky, wondering when summer's going to start. Yes, the UK. Wherever you are, it's great to have you on board. Lots of activity on our social media too this month. So let's rattle through that now and give you some honourable mentions.
Ben's 1954 Sapphire on Insta says, great episode as always. Thanks for the shout out. What a treat. He also refers to our chat about stags overheating and says in his home country of Australia, they've got loads of stags with Holden or General Motors V8s in them.
Don't think they describe that. It's more like, got a hold of your stagger, mate. Actually, a stag in Australia, you need to sort out the overheating because that's going to cook, isn't it? 350 Munro, also in Oz, adds that some people even put 5-litre engines in stags over there. Oof. He says that would be dangerous with that sort of power strapped in, probably mainly from all the trim flying off when you put the foot down. Oh, there's a T-bar.
Just with a 5-litre, it would collapse like the Blues Brothers police car, wasn't it? Just fall apart.
Oh, there's some crap wood off the dashboard.
OMG Motors on Insta picks up on our Crush or Caress feature on the MG Metro and says stepping into a Metro is like getting a warm hug from your nan. It brings back the nostalgia of younger days.
Yeah, that makes me feel slightly uneasy. That at Southern Cars UK says she has a weird love-hate relationship with the Metro. She says, back in period, I would have 100% crushed it, but now I have to caress it. Really? That's what nostalgia does for you, I guess. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think that's the comment I put on Instagram. I'm not feeling it myself, Max.
It's funny that, isn't it? Because I love all these cars, but then I want somebody else to buy them because I love them, but I wouldn't want to drive them. Now, our friend over at My Dad's Car Podcast says his dad used to buy MG Metros as stolen or recovered cars and fix the smashed steering lock and wiring. Oh, that's quite easy, I think. Tidy them up and sell them on. I suppose they were they were quite nickable at the time. I suppose so.
Were.
I suppose they were hot hatches, weren't they?
Yeah, they looked. I mean, it was obviously show ponied up, but they did look like hot hatches, didn't they? And cars did used to get nicked quite a lot back then, didn't they? 350 Munro also added a comment on this as well. He says about the MG Metro, quite simply, bin it.
Fair enough. We talked about old VW campers catching fire in episode 10. Now, I always thought it was because of the old oil that used to spew out of the engine sitting in the engine bay catching fire. But Custom Skills on Insta says the real reason was because the old plastic fuel lines used to go hard, then they went brittle, then they broke, then they leak. Every day is a school day here.
Mr. Dover Benz on Instagram asks how we get to hear about all the car meets that you and I go to and post on Instagram. A variety of ways, really. I mean, mainly for me, word of mouth, some on Facebook.
Yeah, and I just ask you, which ones are you going to? And then I go, right, not going to that, not going to that, not going to that. A couple of great reviews for us from Apple Podcasts. Drive All Night.
Easy for you to say.
I might do that a second time then. There's a couple of good reviews for us on Apple Podcasts. Drive All Night 2000 says the podcasts are a lot of fun and food for thought with a healthy side of banter. We could have written that ourselves.
And Dinon Doberman, also on Apple Podcasts, says, if you like cars and listen to podcasts, what more could you want in a show? Hosted by two genuine gents. He's clearly never met you.
One gent. And Sheps Dizzle rounds it off with knowledgeable but tongue-in-cheek. It's great to hear people giving their opinions and not just sitting on the fence. Oh, you'll definitely get opinions here. And facts, but not always the correct facts either.
Well, thank you for all of those. And if you could add a nice review as well, like those, please do. It really spurs us on to keep this going and put in the time to make it a good listen. And especially with Apple Podcasts in particular, it helps boost our profile as the algorithm likes it, helps the show get seen and get more people involved. So thank you to all of those we've mentioned. Your words are very kind.
Right, up next, we're talking auctions. Now, you may have seen on our Instagram page, the Tyre Kickers UK, I went to the CCA auction at Tatton Park a couple of weekends ago. Very interesting mix of cars. My pick was the red W123 Mercedes 200 in great condition. It went unsold. I think the bidding went to around 5,000, but didn't hit the reserve. I'm guessing maybe the 200 was the carb version. It's the 230E that was fuel injected. Now, Matt, I showed you this on episode 10 and it's unsold, so I'm showing it to you again on episode 11. I think you should buy this. Red, 4-door, W123, 200. Oh, just gorgeous.
I think it looks nice. I said this to you before. I don't think they look that exciting in the UK, the 123s. Give me that and send me to Spain, and I think that's going to look quite cool. It's buy it now for 7,600.
I think that's quite cheap.
That's not bad, but it is, as you say, it's the bog standard one, isn't it? Poverty spec.
Yeah, so maybe, I mean, I've never driven a 200, I've driven a 230E. Maybe it's a bit slow, the car, but I don't know. I think it's a really nice car. Slap a taxi sign on it, drive to Marbella, and you'll earn a fortune.
Might be a new career. I'm getting bored at work. How am I going to do this? It's got the right hubcaps, that's for sure. Definitely those painted hubcaps on those sort of 70s and 80s Mercedes do make the car, don't they?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it had some evidence of painted wings. I think the front wings always rust a bit on those, and they've been replaced and they've been painted, and it was slightly off colour. Could be polished up because it's red, but you know, a 4-door W123 is an uber cool car, and it is one of those cockroach cars. It will just keep going and going, and whatever you do, you're unlikely to kill it. So I think they're, 7,600. I think that's quite a good buy, if maybe a little bit boring.
Okay, fair enough. What else did you spot that caught your eye?
Next up is this Project Pagoda. Now, I absolutely love this. It's a 1967 250 SL W113 Pagoda, and it was basically held together by string. It had no floors, it had no windscreens. It was just incredibly rusty. I mean, look at the pictures here. It would just take, that's a lifetime's work to restore that. It's unbelievable.
I've seen this car before. I think Fred Flintstone was driving it on the Flintstones, where with his feet right through the bottom to make it go. Oh my God. This shows you the state that pagodas have got to, haven't they? They're so expensive that this, although I wouldn't call it scrap, it's not far off, is it?
No, and also it's a left-hand drive one. I mean, it just needs welding all the way through. It's a 250 SL, so it's not even the 230 or the 280. It's not the most sought-after one. There is so much work in this. It's a kind of project from scratch, and what's the bike now price? 21,500. Yeah. That's still a lot of money for that, because you're going to have to do a total restoration, and those are complicated body shells. Those, I think you're probably looking at sinking £100,000 into that, and it just doesn't really make sense.
Well, then you've got to sell it for, so you're then into it, the car owes you 121 and a half, and then you've got to sell it for 150, I mean, that's the start of it, isn't it? I mean, that's 100 grand if you can get everything. I don't know. It just seems like that's just going to go out of control, isn't it? As you say, for a left hooker.
Super brave on that. For a left hooker 250 SL. No, not really. I tell you what was creating a lot of interest was this. It's a 1989 Peugeot 205 GTI 1.9 litre. Now, the auction room came alive at this. These 90s hot hatches are still really popular in the market. And this is a really nice one. It's red with a kind of like red interior, the sunroof. 205 GTIs, you can't go wrong with one of those, can you?
Well, yeah, but look at what it sold for, 20,500.
Yep,
that's a lot of money for a G-Reg 205. Money.
That is good, but I think the market still really loves them. There's always love for these hot hatches, and I think they've been the kind of place to put your money for the last couple of years, and it doesn't really show any sign of calming down at all.
I was going to say, is it a super low mileage one, but it's got 74,000 on the clock.
Not particularly, no. It's just, it's a nice one, but there are other nice 205 GTIs around. But those 1.9s, I mean, they did used to fly because they were so light, and that was quite a big engine in them. So they did handle nicely. But, it wasn't particularly well built because it was an 80s Peugeot, but it's still a nice car. But I was surprised about how much interest that had.
Wow, if we'd have known then what we know now,
I know.
We just bought 10 of them, put them in a garage.
When you could buy them for like 200, 300 quid and stuff, and look at it now.
So what's your take on the auction thing? I mean, obviously a lot of stuff didn't sell, but some stuff sold for a lot of money. Did you get into spot a trend out of that? Because we have been talking about the auctions, watching the auctions in terms of prices.
Hot hatches still going, as we saw with that 205 GTI. A kind of fast fours are still going. Lots of interest in the kind of Ford Escorts and stuff. But it's that flight to quality, really good, high quality cars were selling. The kind of mid-range quality, people were struggling with those. I think people are waiting with their money for the really good stuff that comes up, and the fair to middling stuff that, the kind of general auction fodder seems to be a bit of a struggle to sell it at the moment.
Still to come on the Tyre Kickers, we'll talk about car accessories, the tap we used to fill our cars with in the 70s and 80s. But first, hold up your hand and count off the best 5 current car makers in the world. Now, chances are at least 2 or 3 of those will be German brands. But on this show, we talk classics, and we've been wondering, or Max has been wondering, are their classics better than ours?
Yeah, so I went to a meeting for purely German classic cars recently at the Classic Car Hub in Gloucestershire. And while I was there, it got me thinking, are German cars really as superior as their makers make out?
Because while they may be good for autobahns, are they just a bit rubbish on our British B-roads? Plus, sometimes the interiors are often a bit drab, the seats are hard, maintenance expensive, all those sort of things. And the other question, and whisper this, are they just a bit boring?
Yeah, maybe. So let's do an unscientific comparison of German cars versus the world in rough categories and decades. Not scientific, I'm stressing that. So let's start with the Volkswagen Beetle. Was that, say, a better car than a Morris Minor or a Citroën 2CV? Let's go to the 60s, for example. Minor versus Beetle versus 2CV. Beetle's rust, engine's in the wrong place. They handle really, really badly. The brakes are pretty poor. But then so are the others.
So what's your criteria for judging this? I need some help on this.
I kind of think similar size cars that would maybe be competing with each other in the market at the time when you were buying it. So that's why I'm thinking 60s, Beetle, Minor, 2CV, all kind of competed for roughly the same market, I think. I mean, the Minor, I'd say that's slightly better than a Beetle. The engine's in the right place. They still rust. 2CVs, you'll get killed if you have one in a crash, but while you're having that crash,
you won't break your eggs.
A smile on your face. Exactly. Your eggs will be fine. You'll be dead, but your eggs will be a perfect omelette. I don't know. What do you think as those cars in comparison with each other?
Okay, so if we're putting those three together, the Beetle and the Miner and the 2CV, I'd say one thing they've all got in common is that if you drive those down the road, people will smile at them. They're cars that make you feel happy, aren't they? Beetle, you'll hear it. You'll hear it before it comes around the corner. As you say, there's rust on there. The Miner is a really cute car, but it's very old tech on it. And the 2CV, yeah, it's a cute car as well. But I mean, if you've ever been in one, it is like being in a Silver Cross pram. And as you say, you are the crumple zone. It's a tricky one. I would say, I don't know. I would probably say the Beetle.
I'd say, you see, I disagree. I would say out of the three as driving experiences, I would much prefer a 2CV, because once you get those going and you get those wound up, they're enormous fun because they just seem to cling on in corners that you wouldn't expect it to do. So I kind of think the 2CV would pique my interest in this one. I mean, have a look at this 1981 Citroen 2CV Special. Obviously, it's got all the 2CV-ness about it, but it's bright red. It's got the white wheels. I think for me, a 2CV is the winner because it's just so much fun. And I think the Beetle probably isn't as much fun as that.
Yeah, it's very true. There's also a version of this which was supposedly the more upmarket one, the Citroen Diane, which was my wife's first car, and she still sort of like reminisces about that car. Did you say about suspension on this? They had push-pull suspension, didn't they? Which when you could literally drive it on its side, it would still cling on. So they are fun. This one though, I immediately looked at the price of this. This is $4.5. And I thought, that's cheap for a 2CV. And then if you scroll up, it says a good little project. Those alarm bell words.
It's a project 2CV, yeah. But then there's not that much to go wrong with them, really, is there? A 2CV?
No.
It's not that complicated.
The trick with these is you need a galvanized chassis, and the rest just literally bolts on, and you can buy all the parts pretty cheap. As long as the chassis rusts, basically, on these. And once it's rust, you're toast.
Yeah, but I mean, look at a Beetle and a Miner. I mean, they rust for fun.
Well, that's true. I mean, they are very, very basic, a 2CV, and I think it's worth getting in one and reminding yourself. I mean, the seats come out, don't they? They're like the sort of deck chairs that you can take out and sit in, and they're not much padded beyond that. They are fun. I think the thing that makes these a bit more fun as well is where the gear stick is. It's a column change, isn't it? On these, it's a push-pull column change, which is
it's a good fun gear change. I love 2CV gear changes.
Have you ever had one?
I haven't had one for very long. I think I had one for about a week, which I borrowed off my dad, and I really liked it. I mean, it did teach you something about momentum driving. You have to keep the engine's so poor, so tiny and so slow. You have to keep the momentum going in the corners. And I think that's what I learned about the 2CV, and that's why I like them. For this one, for example, I'm going to basically group these into different sections. So this is the 1960s small car section, and I'm calling that Beetle versus Miner versus 2CV for France, for the 2CV.
I'd go Beetle. I would say one to the Germans.
All right. Okay. Well, fair enough. You can be wrong on that one. 1970s medium car is the next section. So here I'm going to basically compare and contrast a BMW E21 3 Series. That's the kind of first 3 Series shape after the 2002, 1976 to 1983. Versus a Triumph Dolomite, needs no explanation on this podcast, and a Citroen GS. Now, if you have a look at this BMW, this is a 1983 E21 3 Series. This is the kind of classic BMW kind of small saloon, I think. The two-door, I think the E21, it's a nice looking car. It kind of set the tone for BMWs. But is it better than the others? What do you think?
Well, looking at the advert straight off, it's there's 4 shots, one of the boot, one of the spare tyre, one of the boot without the spare tyre in it, and then a street view of somebody's side alley. 17 grand.
There's more photos in it if you keep scrolling. I know what you mean. The photos
First
are a bit
impressions.
odd, but I think it's saying this one hasn't rusted in the boot area like all the others.
Okay.
So keep scrolling. It's quite a nice car. It's got a kind of like stripe down it. It's obviously been restored. I think it's got BBS alloys. It's got a spoiler on, which I don't think is standard on those. And it's that classic BMW small executive saloon. But versus the Triumph Dolomite and maybe the Citroen GS, I would always go for the Dolomite because I think they used to drive a lot better.
Ah, interesting. I was just about to damn this with faint praise, but it is quite cute. It is the 3-door. It's got the classic sort of shark nosy four headlight front to it that they used to have. They are nice. I can't get that excited about it. Citroen GS, I saw one at that show that I went to, and obviously it's a car that I grew up with as a kid, and I thought that would be fun to drive. I need to get a go in a Citroen GS. Should we go and test drive one? Because
that's a good idea.
That's air cooled as well, I think. And they're just sort of, you have to be like, it is like a classic car. You have to be an Octopus to drive that, I think, as well. So that's fun. A BMW, Dolomite, we talked it up and said it was good, but between this lot, I would probably go Citroen GS, and so I would go French on this.
Okay, see, I think the BMW, again, it's what we're saying in the intro. It's a little bit boring. Plus, This is the 316, so it's gutless. So I think, I'm Dolomite, you're Citroen GS. That's interesting on that one. So the all-conquering BMW hasn't quite conquered us here.
Yeah, I just don't think it's as exciting enough. Maybe you need to see it in the flesh, but I think you'd have more fun in a GS and a Dolomite.
So far we've gone France, and you went for the Beetle, you went Germany. I've gone here for the Dolomite. I've gone UK, you've gone France. Let's move to the next category. So this is the 1980s large car. We've done 60s small car, 70s medium car, 1980s large car. So for me, this is a battle between the Audi 100, the C3 version, which had that CD 0.3 that was always in the adverts, the Jaguar XJ6, or a Renault 25. So here's an Audi 100 now on your screen. This is a 1989 Audi 100e Auto. Now, I had one of these in the 1990s when it was at the banger stage. These are incredibly boring. It would understeer if you could ever get it going quick enough. So again, it's kind of proving the theory that German cars maybe not the best. They are a little bit dull, and this was very dull. I
remember a friend's dad had an Audi, and I'd never been in an Audi, so I got in the back of it and went, ooh, and I went, oh, it is a bit boring, isn't it? I sort of muttered that to myself, because it was very Teutonic, wasn't it? It was very slabby, and I think the thing that we weren't used to, I think probably the novelty for us in Britain was, it doesn't squeak or rattle like our cars do, and the plastic seems nice.
That was quite a big thing in the kind of 80s cars. But if you look at the interior shot, it's got some very grey seats and a grey carpet and swathes of black plastic. And these cars, this is an auto, that they were pretty underpowered. And connect that to an auto box sucking the life out of it. It was a very, very dull drive. Yeah,
looking at the seats in the interior, it didn't change much to it looks very much like the late 90s VW Polo I had. Those sort of grey, sort of dog's tooth kind of clothy seats that were very hard, and then the hard sort of soft plastics that was all very well screwed together, but just a bit boring.
Yeah, the engineering was good, and also it had that drag factor, didn't it? It was meant to be one of the most aerodynamic production cars of the time, with that CD of 0.3. But I'm guessing you're only selling that if you're the ad man, because you haven't really got anything else to flog. It didn't drive particularly well. It wasn't fast, so it's quite slippery.
Yeah, I think the thing with Audis of the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and I had one in the early 2000s, was that I think what you appreciated owning one was the stuff that you couldn't really describe, the fact that the doors closed, and they had that build quality, and that's what was reassuring about having one. I don't think sort of they were particularly amazing to stand back and look at. But
which one did you have? I can't remember that.
I had an A4 Avant. In the
yes, I
early
do remember that.
2000s, which was a great car.
Didn't the gearbox go on
that? Yeah, it did.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a bit of an aside. So comparing this Audi 100, for example, on your screen now is what I think is a much better car from 1984 is the Jaguar XJ6. Okay, it wasn't screwed together as well as the Audi, but look at that. That is such an interesting looking car. This is the Arthur Daly Series 3 model, but I'd much prefer that to the Audi 100. Far more exciting, stylish, interesting, glamorous, really.
Yeah, I'd go for the coupe over this. Personally. Okay. It's a bit mayor of your local town, isn't it? Or as you say,
what, with a chain in the back, chain of office sitting in the back, to fate.
It's like somebody with a cigar, isn't it? Who runs a plant hire company driving.
Yeah, but the Audi 100 driver would not smoke because they were too boring.
No, that's true.
The problem.
That's true.
The XJ6, it's interesting.
I'm not big on Jags actually, but I would go for the Jag, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And
Certainly not the Renault 25, which is what you also suggested.
Well, that was the third kind of like comparison I was making. And I was looking around for a Renault 25 on the internet. I couldn't find pictures of a decent one. There was one in Portugal, but it was a wreck. It was a project and only had 2 pictures. So I'm relying on your memory of the Renault 25 because I couldn't find a decent one to compare. But I think in this one, Audi 100 versus XJ6 versus Renault 25, I'd always go for the XJ6. I think it's much more interesting.
Yeah, I'd agree. What about sports cars?
Okay, let's move on to the fourth category. So this is 1990 sports cars. So here I'm going to compare a Porsche 911, a Jaguar XK8, so this is the one after the XJS, versus the Corvette C4. Now, I'm a big 911 man. I've got a kind of 911 as a daily driver, so I'm automatically going to pick the 911 here, and you are going to have to argue the case for the others.
I'll probably go with you the 911. XK8, never got excited about those. Corvette C4,
very quick.
But not really. It's very American, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the slight problem with it.
This is going to be a very short category.
Yeah, it is.
I suppose the XK8, it was quite after the XJS. It was a really nice design, and they made an XKR, I think, in when was that? 1990.
Yeah. It's one of those cars that I do.
I think
one of those cars I sort of do an Alan Partridge shrug to. Somebody says I've got an XK8. I'm like, yeah.
Okay. But they had good suspension. They had that cat suspension, which was quite good, and they had the 4-liter Jaguar AJ-V8. That was a nice engine that lasted forever. So actually, it had all the components of a good sports car, but I just don't think it was really that good a car.
I wouldn't get excited about that. I'm not big on Porsches particularly, but I think you've got an example here you've picked out, and a silver one. I think that looks more fun. I think the Germans have got it on this one,
Yeah, I do. This is a 1996, isn't it? Porsche 993 convertible. And I think the 993 is for me the last air-cooled 911, so that's significant. They had great rear suspension on these. It was slightly trick suspension that made sure it didn't quite overtake you from the back first. So I think the 993 is a really good, modern, classic 911. And actually, I've put this one up on the screen because it's one I quite fancy looking at, actually. The convertible 993. Now, 993 hardtops are really hot, but I think the convertibles are kind of been undervalued. They're still very good cars. They drive really nicely, and you get the convertible look to it. It's like all convertible 911s. It's a bit ugly. It's a bit like somebody's cut the roof off in the wrong place. But you get the good drive of a 911, and 993s, I think, are kind of still underappreciated.
I feel very sorry for that dealer who's about to get visited by you. Oh, yeah. Porsche Stato.
Have you got 3 hours? I'd like to spend some time talking about your car.
I think you're fine. That's not original.
Your advert's quite wrong.
So have we learned anything doing this?
No. But my conclusions of this are that German cars always ride quite hard. They're built for the Autobahn, and I always find that they kind of make your teeth chatter in a way that British cars and French cars are just so much more relaxing to drive. But the trouble is, I think in the UK, it's came to a point where it's Hobson's choice because all the other car manufacturers went to the wall. So we're kind of left with the Germans, and that's a bit of a shame.
Well, what do you think? Do you think the German classics are a bit dull, or do you think they should be celebrated? I think one thing we didn't put in there, Max, was a BMW 2002, but we're talking silly money for that. But that's got a bit of style to it. But anyway, let us know. We'll put we'll put a post up on Instagram, and you can comment on that and tell us what you think. Our Instagram, by the way, if you don't know it, it's at the Tyre Kickers UK. Next up, cast your mind back to the 70s, 80s and 90s. Those days when cars didn't come fully loaded as they do now. In those days you were lucky to get a cup holder, let alone CarPlay. Most cars, especially in the 70s, came with a poverty spec and just a heater to play with if you were lucky. So what did we do?
Well, we filled our cars with tat. That's what. The car accessory market was big business, and you'd trip over tons of stuff in the auto factors, from air fresheners to ashtrays. You could buy everything from A to Z, including an A to Z for those pre-sat-nav family arguments, or maybe one of those huge spiral-bound touring maps of Britain.
We were all guilty, though, of topping up with tat to make our cars either go faster, look better, or feel more comfortable. So what we thought we'd do just before we finish up today is we'll talk about the tat that you could get and see what we remember buying. Max, start us off. What are you going for first?
my weakness was wiper spoilers. Do you remember those things you used to attach to your wipers?
You didn't buy those.
To pin them down at speed. I bought them for everything. Usually, I tried to get them in the same colour as the car, which just made them look even worse because the wipers were black and you had a red car. But look at them. I found some on eBay here. These are some original old ones. Car wiper mate. I remember clicking them on to try and make the wipers pin to the screen when you're doing up to 40 miles an hour.
Is that what they were for? Was it to pin the wipers down, were they?
Yeah, to clean your screen a lot better when you're challenging the edges of grip.
They were like flares for wipers, weren't they, essentially? 70s flares. My God, yeah, you saw them on everything. I mean, these are sort of original, sort of new old stock cream white thing, but most of them are black, weren't they? And you blinged that up. And you also put the louvres on the back window as well to just finish it off.
Think about these car wipers, though. Most of them were in the wrong direction to the airflow. And the airflow was designed to go over the windscreen. So they probably an aerodynamicist at a car designer was probably working for years and you just foiled it with your car wiper.
Okay, they're good. But I've got one for you. I was always about car audio, and I'd have no more pleasure than going into a Halfords and pressing the button to select all the different head units with the different speakers.
You still do that, though, don't you? Even today.
I do. Well, they've cut it down a little bit, although they still have got it.
Well, they've seen you coming. That's why they've closed the section.
But the other thing as well, it wasn't just car head units, was it? Do you remember? And here, let me show you this. The graphic equalizers.
Oh, wow.
And here's one we found on eBay. If you'd signed the options list on the car and you got, the head unit and the graphic equalizers, but usually they were aftermarket things from Halfords or something like that. And here's one here. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 band graphic equalizer. Woof.
Well, if you remember, cars had like 3 switches, and one of those was the hazard lights, and one was the wipers, and one was the headlights. So that's all you had to play with. But in this graphic equalizer, you've got everything.
If you spent quite a bit of time with it, it would still sound crap. Even
because you were playing off a cassette. That's why.
But you could if you spent ages adjusting all the things, it still sound rubbish.
On this one, you've got LEDs.
Wow, you needed LEDs.
I'm actually really excited about this. You've got an LED on-off button. You've got a front and rear fader, and then you've got 2, 4, 6, 7 channels so that you can split your cassette into 7 channels.
The last 2 channels on the right there, that's the hiss control, as you say. So if you put them up, you get more hiss.
Just slightly less.
And the ones on the left are the ones that blow the cones out your speakers if you put them up too much. Okay, well, there's loads of tat that we bought. Let's do a stream of consciousness now. Go for it. Name some.
Do you remember bull bars on those tiny Suzuki Jeeps? They were big slaver of chrome that was so heavy it probably made it very nose heavy for all those balls that you would find on the ring road.
Well, I see your bull bars, and I raise you anti-static hanging straps. Do you remember the things? They used to be on the back of everything.
They don't exist anymore, so clearly they didn't work, because otherwise you'd still have them.
They always had that sort of like line, the sort of forked lightning white line down the back with an arrow on it, didn't it?
meant to stop you feeling car sick. What about whip aerials? Do you remember the whip aerials that kind of started at the front and then were tied to the back of your car for no reason?
But a lot of those were CB aerials, I think, weren't they? Breaker. Breaker, what's your handle?
God, that was sad, wasn't it?
What was your handle? I'm
a little bit too young for CBs. This is one thing I did used to buy for some ridiculous reason. I used to buy a dashboard suction compass to stick on your windscreen so you could decide whether you're going north or not. Never made any difference whatsoever.
You still didn't get out of Malvern, did you?
No, exactly. Still stayed there. Just drove around the same places doing handbrake turns.
What was the point of those?
I don't know. It made you feel like a pilot, didn't you? As though you were kind of like piloting heading north. But I don't think it made much difference to me in MG Metros.
Air vent air fresheners. We've still got those now. People still buy those now, don't they?
Yeah, taxi drivers, because somebody's vomited on the back of the cab.
What about those? Do you remember the car key magnetic stash box that you would put your car key in?
Yeah.
And then you were supposed to put it, where were you supposed to put it? Like under the wheel arch or something?
Clamp it under the wheel arch, but then as soon as you went over a bump, it fell off. So you without your car key. Yeah, that was the weakest security measure in the history of man.
Oh, pedals. Metal pedals.
Oh, pedals. You could screw into the plastic pedals.
Made it go faster.
Break off, yeah.
So actually, if you think about it, Max, if you add it all up, you've probably spent more on accessories and tat than you have on cars over the years.
Yeah, probably. And all that tat's gone straight in the bin, isn't it? Because it lasted about 6 months and then it broke.
So yeah, what tat did you fill your car with? Let us know if there's something we've missed off the list, glaringly obvious. Drop us a line on our socials. We're on Facebook, The Tyre Kickers, and we're also on Instagram at The Tyre Kickers UK. So surely that's enough for another episode. No one could bear much more of this, could they?
No. Please get in touch with us to comment. We are on Instagram at The Tyre Kickers UK, and on Facebook, just search for us, The Tyre Kickers, 3 separate words.
And please rate and leave a review on your favourite podcast service. 5 stars or some nice words. Thank you very much.
We're back next time with Crush It or Caress It, the car they called a skip, the Skoda Favourite. Who will favour the Favourite?
Plus, have you ever thought about driving something really old, like a century old? Well, join us as we turn back the clock and look at some vintage rollers.
So join us next time as we continue to kick tyres as internet buyers on The Tyre Kickers.
Bye for now.